I'm Jenny Doan. You may know me from my many tutorials for Missouri Star, but this isn't one of them. This is Quilt Shop Drop-In. Come with me as I crisscross the nation, dropping into quilt shops to unveil the captivating stories behind each owner's unique quilting journey. Today we're in Duluth, Georgia at String & Story, where owner HollyAnne has cultivated a haven for quilters seeking a top-notch quilt shop with small-town warmth. Hey!
Jenny!
Hey,
rock star!
Am I a rock star by just walking in here?
Yes, you are.
I am.
It just
I
rubs
love
off,
it.
you know.
I love it. That's awesome.
And you bring your own sparkle. What can I say?
That is
Welcome
wonderful.
to String & Story.
Well, first of all, I love your name. I love the name String & Story. I think
Thank
that's
you.
such a great name because, you know, everything has a story. But what a great shop you have here.
Thank you.
You going to show me around?
I am going to show you around. You in for some quilt stories?
I am in for it.
The history and inspiration behind String & Story is the whole concept of when we make quilts, we're cutting fabric apart and sewing it back together. And often I found that quilters are doing the same thing with themselves. So I had both of my boys when I was really young, and at first we didn't know it, but later I was diagnosed with really severe postpartum depression. And after having my first son, my mom could just tell that something wasn't right. So she brought me a big box of t-shirts and said, you know, I think you should Google how to make a t-shirt quilt. And maybe this will just give you a hobby, give you an outlet, something to do while you're at home with your newborn. And that's exactly what I did. And along the way, I absolutely fell in love with quilting. I discovered a whole world of quilting that I didn't know existed. I fell in love with fabric. I fell in love with free motion quilting. And most of all, I fell in love with the community that I began to connect with online. And I think what's unique about quilts is so often we are making them in order to process feelings, right? We cut fabric up and sew it back together, and often it's because because life has ripped us apart and we're sewing ourselves back together, right?
That's exactly right.
So each one has a story, and each one brings us back to a certain point. So I realized that I could draw on my teaching background and begin to actually teach other people how to free motion quilt their own quilts as well. And this gave me not only a sense of purpose as a young mom, but it continued to grow those connections that I was starting to make with other quilters. And from that, as I began to think about turning this concept that was evolving into an actual business, I needed to name the company. And String & Story made a lot of logical sense. Of course, it alludes to the fiber art that we do, but it also really ties in the fact that community and people are absolutely central to what we're doing.
So tell me a little bit more about this quilt.
Yeah, so Polaris was actually designed for my dad, and decided
so cool.
that I wanted to put some of those things together, and then the idea of a star being light, because those are all things that my dad reflects to me as well, right? And so it was right about the time.
You are a lucky girl.
I am a lucky girl indeed. And my dad is also the one that encouraged my art when I was young by cutting a hole in the side of the house to put a window in so I'd have better light.
Oh
so
my gosh,
there's a lot there.
Wow.
And so this was, my parents had asked me to make a quilt for them, and I was like, I'm not just going to make a quilt. I'm going to actually design a pattern and put some of our family story in this. And so that's what this has grown into. And this particular one I love because it's so scrappy, and I love a good scrappy moment in a scrappy quilt.
It actually also a little bit looks like even men's shirts.
Yes,
you know, like
it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, with all of those ginghams. So there's a lot of layers to that story. I think, you know, every quilt has its layers.
Oh,
and
that's
this one really shows off Dad and just the impact that he has. And now he gets to spend all that time with his grandsons and be that person for them too, which is really awesome. And being able to use both a brick and mortar shop that folks can have a destination to come to and visit with us truly in person, but also to be able to connect online. It's that little bit that I can give back to a community that's been such a key part of my own growth and mental health, and being able to continue fostering that so that no one else has to feel that way again. So when you're a brand new quilter, I have two really vital pieces of advice. First, learn everything. Don't say, when I master this, I'm gonna learn that. Let yourself be a beginner at everything all at once. This was how I ended up free motion quilting. I didn't know I was supposed to be scared of it, so I just jumped in and tried. And then by the time I found out I was supposed to be scared, I was decent enough that I was like, seems to have turned out okay. Do that. Learn all the techniques. Play around. You don't have to deep dive into all of them, but do a little bit of foundation paper piecing. Do a little bit of applique. Try a little bit of free motion quilting, and just kind of break that ice with yourself mentally on having tried those different skills. Speaking of free motion, can I show you a little bit?
I'd love to see it.
Awesome. And when we're early in the quilting process, I teach 4 motifs. So I teach meander, loopy meander, swirls, and switchbacks. And then the next thing I teach is paisley, so just a teardrop shape.
Okay.
And folks are like, okay, I can do that. But what I really want to do...
I'm still trying to remember the 4 things you said.
That's
fast.
okay.
Say it again.
Meanders, loopy meanders.
Okay,
so
loopy.
wiggly lines with loops, swirls.
Right.
And then switchbacks, which are just like straight lines with tight turns at the end.
Oh, okay.
And then I throw in those paisleys. But by this point, folks are like, but when am I going to be able to quilt a feather? And I'm like, but here's the thing. A feather is just paisleys that lined up for recess. So you have it set in a straight stitch with your needle in the middle, and you just put a simple little hopping foot on there.
Okay.
And Jenny, I don't even drop my feed dogs.
Oh my gosh, you're a wild woman.
I'm a wild woman. But here's why. Depending on the machine you're on, now the Burnett, this isn't going to give you trouble, but if you're on the $97 machine you got at the big box store, if you drop those feed dogs, it messes with the tension and you have a hard time getting a pretty stitch.
Okay, that makes sense.
But because this foot isn't doing anything with the feed dogs, they can just hang out back there and it's not going to bother anything. So it's one less step and we can just get going. So you put the foot on and you're good to go, but you make them line up for recess. So when you do one, you then just do the next one right in a line instead of, wandering off to the side or make them all fit together. And it's all just hand-eye coordination. So when I teach this, I always tell my students, if you can write your name, you can free motion quilt. Because there's very few shapes.
And then it just
settles out. So there's a funky little seam there, so we'll just quilt it flat. It's fine. There you go. And when I wash it, you're not going to be able to see it anyway because it's going to crinkle. I quilt quilts to be loved and to be used.
That's my mantra all the time. Love, used, and worn out.
Absolutely. I got a few at my house that are going to need replacing here soon.
Then I may have to try this. You could try this.
The other thing is to remember it's just fabric. And I know that can feel like, but I spent good money on this. I've put a lot of time into this. But at the end of the day, it's just fabric. And you can always rip it out and try again. You can always cut a new piece of fabric. You can always just let it be a little bit wonky and let it be part of your quilting journey. Because the whole point here is to have fun. The point is to be creative, to have joy units, to enjoy the process. And if you're getting so bogged down in perfection that it's not fun anymore, it's time to let that perfection go. The perfection is negotiable, the joy is not.
So can I see your long arm?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, that's big.
Come on over. So this is my Moxie, which is just a great name. If you ask me, right? I feel like it just fits
it's
the
a handy
vibe.
quilter.
It is a handy quilter. I always tell people, I'm like, it's like driving a race car. Then you get that rush, but then you get a quilt to commemorate the occasion at the end. So that's pretty great too. This quilt has been waiting to be quilted for quite a long time. So I think that it's perfect that, it was ready just in time for you. So how delightful. Have you ever done hand-guided free motion quilting on the Longarm?
I've written my name at a few quilt shows.
Yeah. You want to try the meander?
I could try.
I think you should try it. So this is your start-stop. So one hand or both, and then when you hit this, your needle will start moving, and it'll just speed up with
The
you.
saving grace is that you can pick it out.
You think I'm going to pick it out after you quilt on my quilt?
Is this the go?
That's the go. You got this. You got this. You're a rock star. Come on.
Hold on. You know what this feels like? It feels like the last time Ron and I just rode a roller coaster. And I'm white knuckled on there. That's how I feel like this is going to go.
Remember to breathe. That's the important
Okay, yeah, I will forget that. All right, here we go.
I hit it. Perfect.
Oh, it's a short thread.
Yeah. Woo. Give me 5. A whole rock star. A whole rock star. Like a whole professional. How'd it feel? It's a rush, right?
It's very stressful.
It always starts out. We We have a lot of food, we have a lot of shopping. It's really fun to come into town and get to know people closer over a few days while making a project together. And during those, we talk about different techniques as part of the quilt, but it's also just a really incredible time to connect with fellow quilters. I think one of the things that I love about being in a town is that increased sense of community beyond even just our quilters, because it means that I get to introduce people to quilting, which is really cool. Being able to see new businesses open and people try stuff and like that community creativity.
Well, and
too.
so many of our small towns are going away, and the fact that you can actually open a shop in a town you grew up in, I think is amazing. I think that's really, really fun.
And you know, my parents and I, we both live here in Duluth, so we've got 3 generations now that my kids have come along, and that's not unusual here in Duluth. It has been such a delight to welcome Jenny to Duluth and to String and Story. And very early after finding out that all of this was going to happen, I was really excited to hear that part of that plan could be a party. Because after all, if Jenny's going to come to Duluth and I'm going to get to have the fun of hanging out with her, I just couldn't bear the thought of not getting to include the rock stars in that as well. So Jenny and I have done some filming already, telling a bit of the story of String and Story. But tonight we actually get to welcome the rock stars into the shop and spend some time together. And we're gonna have a cheese board and have some snackies. We're gonna get to talk about quilt. And I'm just really excited to get to fill this space up with people who all love being in community, who all love quilting, and get to share that spark and that magic together.
Well, look at this. You got them all in here.
I got them all in here. We fit somehow. I don't know.
I thought at least there'd be chairs for y'all.
Sorry.
There's a chair.
You can chair for me.
I loved spending time with Jenny today talking about community. And, you know, Jenny has been a part of the quilting world a lot longer than I have and has been building a community for a lot longer than I have. And I was so encouraged speaking with her about how the joy just continues to grow and multiply as the business continues on. And that makes me really excited for String and Story's next chapters as the Quilting Rockstars continue to grow too.
So an hour today, tomorrow we're an hour better. Enjoy where you are, be happy for where you are. Remember that comparison is the thief of joy, and we do it to bring us joy, to bring us peace, to, you know, just to lift our hearts and fill our buckets.
Thank you for having me. It's been so late. I love your shop. I love you. I feel like we made a big connection. I agree. It's wonderful to see you. Thank you for this tote on that I carry all my goodies. Oh, my goodies. All right. Well, let's see you soon. Bye, Jenny. Bye-bye.